Well, good morning, everyone. I am showing it as 10 o'clock, and we like to start right on time because we know how busy not only you are, but our guests are. My name is Sue Fluke, and I am the co-director of coaching for our West USA company. And we consider this part of coaching is to be able to bring you information like this. And we have a lot of stuff to cover today. So I'm going to introduce our couple of people. Our designated broker, Dwayne Fouts, is on as well. So if I do have to step off, he can take over. Nick Wiedekamp is on here as well. He is one of he's my boss. How's that? And then Heather Deckert is going to be monitoring things. We're going to ask. If you do have questions, you can put them in the chat, but we are going to leave about 15 minutes in the end for you to answer openly to Zach and to Cassie any questions that you do have. So it is such a thrill for me, and thank you from the Arizona Department of Water Resources, Zach Richards, who has been with them for about 6 years, and I'll let him introduce himself in a second, and Cassie McVeigh, and they will also be sharing their information via the screen. So Zach, take it away.
Sure. So Zach Richards here. I've held various different positions in the department, was in statewide planning with the Governor's Water Augmentation Council for a period of time, and then Drought and Conservation Coordinator. And my latest role has been in the wells section. And Cassie and I have very similar responsibilities, dealing with change of ownerships for wells and notice of intentions to drill, modify, or deepen, or even replace wells. So that's kind of my background. And Cassie, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Cassie McVeigh. I've been with the department for about 8 months now. My background is in sustainability, ecosystem sustainability. I'm one of the people who processes all the change of ownerships and notice of intents when they come in. So I'm the one who, sends them back. So we're right there seeing, everything as it comes in, what's being done right, what's being done wrong, and what we think people need help with, and where we can try to make things run smoother.
And Sue, do you want us to answer questions as they come in, or rather wait towards the end?
Well, if the people can put them in the chat for the moment, and then at the very end, if they have any leftovers, then we will also take those open hands. I see one hand's already up. Nancy, did you want to ask a quick question? You have to unmute. I guess not. Okay, go ahead, Zach, and share your screen or whatever, and we will get to all the questions as we can. I'll be monitoring that as well.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Sue. Cassie, you mind sharing or do you want me to do it? I can do it. All right, pull it up here. All right, and then slideshow. Oops, go way back to the beginning. There we go. All right, so again, we're there. The Department of Water Resources, Groundwater Permitting and Wells section is the official title of the section that we represent. And so we're just going to be going over a few items that might be important for your clients. Change of ownerships for existing wells, notice of intentions to drill or modify, deepen, even replace wells, and some things you might not know about, like statement of claimants, water rights, that sort of thing. So we're going to be covering things that might be applicable to your clients that you can probably educate them on and direct them to the right places. So this beginning portion of the presentation, Cassie will be discussing a little bit more about what we do. Cassie?
So wells today in the 21st century, they're not going to be your granddad's wells. They're going to be pretty technologically impressive. You can go to the next slide. So this is what modern wells look like. The two on the left or the right are going to be what are called wellheads. And then we to the left, we have what's called a tank. You can see the concrete pad that they're located on. Models may vary, but this, for domestic purposes, these are pretty much what wells are going to look like. So if you ever have to do like a site walkthrough or walk the parcel that you're on, you know, if you don't know if there's a well or you're not sure and you want to look around, this is what you're going to be looking for. So this is what we're talking about. This is what, so if you ever, you know, if you never need to see one, this is what you're going to be looking for.
So Cassie, do the cities also have to apply for a permit for all of their wells?
Like municipalities, if they're going to be
Yes.
like, if they want, well, yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, but they're usually going, like, they may have domestic wells, but they may also be like commercial or industrial wells, which are different. And they wouldn't necessarily look like this. This is going to be more focused towards like domestic and, you know, for household use wells. This is our team. Our leader over there, Stella, to the left. And then along the top, those are our hydrologists. And then the bottom two rows, that's going to be people who are going to be looking at your applications or dealing with your change of ownerships. These are the faces of the people who do all that. All right, so what do we do here? So the groundwater and permitting and wells section, we process what are called notice of intents. Those are the applications for wells. To, like Zach said, to drill new wells, to modify wells, to deepen wells. If they're going to be drilling or doing something with wells, they have to apply through us and get what's called a notice of intent. When last year we processed over 5,200 of them. We maintain the database of all recorded wells in Arizona. We have over 220,000 of them. This is all kinds of wells, environmental monitor, all sorts of ones, not just domestic wells. We process the after filing documents, pump installation completion report, drill logs, the change of ownerships. So we make sure that every well that is registered has an up-to-date file with it. So any and all documents that we have with a well is maintained and recorded and uploaded so that it's easy for the owners and public to see. Change of ownerships, that form is going to be called the 55-71A. That is used as a change of well ownership, and it can also be the same form that you use to change information such as parcel information. If you're updating a mailing address but not actually changing ownership, there's a section on there called section 4, which is what you're gonna so you use the same form, but you would just use section 4. We received over 5,500 of them last year. We've been getting a steadily more increased amount of them. This is the housing industry, as well as, you know, more reliance on groundwater. So there's just more.
About how long does it take to process those change of ownerships or what you're doing?
It can vary. If it's you know, we get it in hand and, you know, everything's up to date, everything's accurate on it, you know, it can be relatively short. Or if it's, you know, there was never a parcel assigned to it, and it was last recorded in 1980 something, and now we have to go digging in deeds and trying to figure out parcel splits and stuff. It can take a long time. So
how far back does your database go?
Our database goes back to it started in 1980 with the Groundwater Protection Act, I believe is what the name was. So our records go back to the 1980s, but we also have to use like the county assessor and the county recorder's offices a lot to check and verify information. And sometimes they have information, but they won't have like images of it.
Mhm.
So it can be very, like making those chains of deeds going back to verify ownership can be very problematic and a headache sometimes.
Mm.
So, we also assist in customer service and assisting with public. We take about 900 calls a month, and we also provide licensing and driller exams for well drillers in the state. So if there's going to be drilling a well, they need to be certified with the state. All right. So these are our notice of intents by years. As you can see, we've had a steady increase in notice of intents over the years. And unfortunately, we don't have 2022's information yet. So this is one of our main focus. This is the 55-71A form. And if you already have a saved copy of this, I would suggest going to our website and getting a new version, because as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, our address has changed as of May 2022. So if you're trying to send a hard copy to us through the mail and you have our old mailing address, it may be getting lost in the mail. So if you're having issues with that, I would first check that. As you can see, there's right beneath the red writing, there's 3 things that you're going to need in addition to this form. So there's going to be 4 things total. You're going to need this form, which is the 55-71A. You're going to need a filing fee, which can be paid by check, money order, or if you want to, we can do a credit card payment. You just have to give us a contact information that we can call you, or a phone number that we can call with you and take the payment online or over the phone. So just make sure that you're giving us a good phone number if you want to do a credit card payment. Section 2 is just registry information. That's your 55 number. If there's a physical physical address for the well, please write that. If not, it's fine. Parcel information. Please put the most up-to-date parcel information in there so that if there was a parcel change, we can update that information after we research it. So we would not only do the change of ownership, but we would also update the parcel information. So for example, if there was a split, like a parcel went from 10017,003 to 1003 A, B, and C, please put that A or B or C so that we can see that the parcel has updated and we can verify it with the assessor's map, with the information that's provided by the assessor, and verify that and update that as we change the ownership as well. So we can do multiple things at once with this form.
I have a question, Cassie.
Yes, sir.
This is Richard Mazzella.
Hi.
How are you?
Very good. How can I help you, sir?
I have a transaction that's taking place right now.
Mhm.
It's out in Scottsdale in the Rio Verde area.
Yes.
And there was never a well share agreement recorded, but we do have the well owner's registration information. And there was some dispute, but the original documentation that we have recorded shows that we have a 20% share on that well. So what do I have to do to protect my client's right to that share?
We were going to get to that, and I think the next slide or two, but
Okay.
ADWR, and there is no ADWR nor any government agency has any oversight or regulation on well share agreements. That is completely civil. We don't maintain records of them. We don't even have records of which wells are shared wells or who are on those shared wells. We do not maintain records of that. That is purely civil. I would suggest, if you wanted more information about that, contact the county recorder for the county that it's located in. They might have something on that, but again, because it's a civil matter and it's between the public, it may not be there. So unfortunately, when it comes to well share agreements, we don't have any information about that. We cannot provide any information about that, when we can have no say in that whatsoever.
So yeah, so there is not currently a well share agreement.
There might be, but like I said, we don't we don't maintain records of that.
Okay.
So we're going to ask as much as possible, keep the questions into the chat, or at the very end, they're going to take questions at the end so that we can get through all of the information that they need to present, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so real quick on this form, or on that form, if you don't know your 55 number, or if you're having difficulty getting it, call us, we will help you look for it. So, yeah, so make sure you have that when you send it in. All right, so here's a good example of what a map that we would like to have come in with us. So the form must be filled out if the well is physically located on that parcel. So if it's part of a well share agreement, but the well isn't physically on that parcel, you don't have to do anything. It's only if that well is physically on the parcel. So if you're part of a well share agreement and the well isn't on your parcel, you do not need to do a well share agreement. You do not need to do a change of ownership. It's only if the person who is selling the parcel that the parcel that the well is physically located on is changing ownership. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Again, the three things we're going to require is the filing fee, so $30 per well, and you will also need to fill out a form per well. So if there's 2 wells on one parcel, it would be $60 and 2 forms. We're currently working through a large backlog. It is about 2 to 3 months out that we're working through. We're finishing March and working into April right now. Part of that, like I said, back in May, we changed our mailing address. So we are dealing with some stuff that got lost in mail and some chaos with that. And we're trying to get through that as fast as possible. Next slide.
Cassie, is it all right if I intervene real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the legal proof of land ownership, a copy of the deed is really important. So when you do a change of ownership for a well, you want to have that copy of the deed along with that change of ownership form. And we wanted to show the new buyer on there. That's really important because a lot of times I might get an application that might not have a deed, in which case I have to go into the county recorder and try to find the deed myself. And if I can't find the deed, that prolongs this process. I might kick it back and ask for a deed. So it's just a lot easier for everybody. Just include the deed with the application. You've got to have that proof of land ownership. A map with the well location, what we mean by that is you kind of see this picture over here to the right-hand side. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We're not looking for a survey map necessarily. It's a lot easier for us if because like sometimes those survey maps don't even show a well. So it's a lot easier for us if we keep good records of where the well is actually located on the property. This is good, not just for us, but also for buyers in the future of that property. So they know where the well actually is.
Or if it splits again.
Yeah, if it splits again, yeah. That's another headache, right?
Yeah.
So what we were asking for here is sort of this imagery map of the property. And you could ask the seller or somebody who's knowledgeable of the well location to draw a little X on that image. You can do this digitally through email, and you can print it off and then send it along with your application. That's really what we're looking for when we say a map. Okay. All right, I'll place myself back on mute.
And then, so this was what I was talking about with well share agreements and shared wells. We do not have authority to determine legal ownership. We do not maintain a registry of what wells are shared wells and who are on those well share agreements. As I said, the best bet would be to check the recorder office of the county that this is occurring in. But again, that is a civil matter. The only way a government agency would become involved is if 15 or more connections or 25 or more people were hooked up to one system. It would become what's considered a community water system, which would become a whole other thing. And there are processes and procedures for that, and some regulation and reporting with that. But until it becomes that big, we don't do anything with those. No government agency does. Next slide. So searching for your well, for the well and the well registry. Easiest way to do it is by parcel number. You can search, there's multiple ways. You can use our interactive wizard on our website. There's the interactive search map. There's the image recorder, or the recorded image document area. There are numerous places to check this. You can check by parcel, township and range, owner's last name. You may not be able to find it based on those things, just because the last owner may not be the last registered owner. They may have, changed owners a couple of times. And some wells are so old that they were never assigned a parcel number, just because they didn't require that back in the 80s and stuff. So it may not have a parcel number. So you may search but the parcel number and it may not pop up. So you can try with this. If it doesn't work, go ahead and give us a call. We'll help you. But if you want to, try with searching with the parcel or the last name here. So in addition to the search function, you can also use the map to literally draw a square or a shape on the map, and it'll immediately pull all the information in that area and put it down here into an easy to read chart. So you can see all the wells in that area, what kind of wells they are, who owns them, what parcel they're on, and what their information such as depth and casing size are. You can even click the data export and it'll take all of that and put that into an Excel spreadsheet. So you can literally go draw, click, and export within seconds.
Yeah, let me just real quick here. I'm going to bring you guys to our webpage. I'll just start from the main page so that y'all understand where to find this.
While you're doing that, Zach,
Yeah.
Cassie, you mentioned that you monitor, like when it becomes a community system, ADR or the Department of Water Resources is responsible for that. So most of your communities have to have at least 100-year
Assured water supply.
right.
Yes.
Are you aware right now of any communities that are having issues with that?
Not to my knowledge, but that wouldn't necessarily be something that I would be involved in.
There is a moratorium in Pinal active management area.
Yeah.
So they've run up to where they are not able to issue assured and adequate water supply certificates to some developments happening down in the Pinal County area because of that, the lack of proof to be able to acquire 100 years worth of groundwater. Okay, so if you go to programs, you can go to wells and permitting, or we also have this shortcut for online services. We have the well map. I'll just go to our section page. So this is where you're going to find a lot of the materials that we're going to talk about throughout this presentation. So you have a well record search, forms and applications like the change of ownership or notice of intent to drill, terminology if you're not familiar with it. And let's go to, for example, the well search map. This one sometimes confuses people because there's all these red dots, and the location isn't always where people think that the well is. These red dots are not based on a GPS coordinate. These red dots are based on what's called cadastral. For those who aren't familiar, it's an old way of trying to locate things in the state and just dividing things up by quarter, and down to the 10 acre, right? So within those 10 acres, in the center of that, that's typically where that dot is going to land. And so you can do a parcel search here. Some counties don't share the parcel boundaries with us. So like Coconino, you won't be able to select. There's a few other counties here that just don't allow me to select it simply because of that lack of a parcel boundary layer. But for those who do, I mean, you can enter in the parcel number here, and then you can enter in a radius distance from that parcel. So you can search in that general area for that red dot or that well. And so I typically might do, if it's a smaller property, I might do like 100 meters, let's say. And then that'll zoom in on that particular property, and it shows that drop down table that Cassie showed us earlier, where it has all those wells located within that 100-meter radius. And then I'll also take us to the wizard. So from here, I'll go to well record search. And then you want to look for search wizard or the application. It's all the same thing. So well registry number is obviously ideal. So once you have that, you have access to the imagery record for that particular well, all the information contained for that well. If we don't have that, you can search by name, like Cassie said, or the parcel. And then there's also a link to that map that I just showed you earlier there on the right-hand side. So that's how you get to each of one of those applications. All right, let me show that presentation. Oops. Go back here. There we go. All right. Go ahead, Cassie.
All right. So if you can't find your well, it's okay. If you think it might be unregistered, try to determine the date of when you think that well was drilled by the decade. If you think it was before 1980, or if you think it was after 1980, there's two different ways to go about this. If it was pre-1980, it would be what's called a late registration. If it was after 1980, it would be what's called an after the fact well, which basically you would go do a notice of intent on a well that had already been dug. So there's two different ways to go about this, and it's entirely based on when you think the well was drilled. You can also look through the previous owners of the property. Like I said, sometimes the searching by the owner may not work because the last owner may not have been the last registered owner. They may have not registered and just sold the part, so find out the last owners and try those last names. If you can't find it based on parcel information, try to get the parcel history for that parcel. See if it was split or combined or something like that. There are a lot of parcel splits and recombining, and a lot of times. So sometimes that may not be why, because you were searching for the parent parcel for one that was split into 5 different parcels. And again, if you still can't find it after all of this, just go ahead and give us a call during office hours. We will happily try to help you and find the well in question for you.
Okay. So thanks, Cassie, for explaining the change of ownership process. I'm going to take over here with the 55-40 notice of intent to drill a new well. This is if your client might be interested in getting some sort of water access. Sometimes I get phone calls from people who recently acquired a property, but there's no access to water, or perhaps they're getting water hauled out to the property by the goodness of the hearts of some nearby utility. So if they say, you know what, I want to have a well drilled in my property so that I don't have to depend on anyone else for my water, this is the process for that. If they have a existing well on the property, let's say it's really old or it's of bad quality in its construction design, maybe the well is dry, they can deepen it, they can modify the existing construction casing and the annual material so that's more up to date with today's standards. If they are inside of a regulated area, which we'll get to later, they might decide they don't want that old well, they want to replace it with a new one. Okay, all those options are for this form here, the notice of intent to drill a new well. So an application must be filed prior to drilling the well, not after. Filing fee is $100 or $150, depending on what the well is being used for and where it's located. It'll kind of say on that form there, what's the difference between the two. Basically, if it's being used for domestic purposes, and that means it's pumping less of amount of water, like a 35 gallons per minute is kind of the cutoff. So if you're pumping less than that, and it's being used for residential purposes, then it's a $100 fee. Most of anything else is going to be $150. If you're pumping a lot of water, if you're using it for irrigation, inside of an active management area, those things will require a higher fee. A licensed well driller is required. So the client will have to go on to, say, wellowner.org is typically where I refer people to find a licensed well driller in their area. So Register of Contractors for Arizona will have a list of licensed well drillers as well. And some applications will need county approval prior to our review. What the county is looking for is whether or not the proposed well location will be within 100 feet of a septic tank or septic system, right, to prevent contamination issues. And there's a 15-day time frame. Once we get it at the department, we'll review the application. Within those 15 days, we would give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If it's a thumbs down, we'll send out a letter requesting more information. If the application is approved, the well driller has 1 year from the date the ADWR received the application and drill the well. Most of the time, it's reasonable to submit an application. This can't guarantee that it's going to be approved. Once the well has been drilled for water withdrawal purposes, the well owner must file a pump installation completion report with the department, right? So you drill the well, pump is installed. Usually while the driller is on site, they're going to do a pump test to make sure that it works appropriately. And they need to work with the landowner to provide that information so that the landowner can fill out that pump installation completion report and then send it to us so that we have information about that pump. Again, that's to keep accurate records. That's also for future buyers of the property. There's a little link here on this slide for the practical guide for drilling a domestic water well in Arizona, right? So that's your typical residential water user. That is a handy link that I'm going to bring up in a second once we start talking about water quality. So we'll get to that. Well maintenance is super important. You can educate your clients a little bit on this based on what we have here on this slide. So if they do have a well on the property and they're curious about how to maintain it, the well system, including the pump, storage tank, pipes, and valves, and the water flow must be inspected every 5 years by a licensed well driller or pump installer. They can also do a water flow bucket test. that can be done by the owner. The pump installer well driller can conduct longer, more accurate tests, right, rather than a bucket test. So if you want good numbers, opt in for the licensed well driller. How much water does a family need? There's this thing called the water calculator. It's basically just internal use in the home for how much water you think you might need. This is a handy tool. If you're trying to figure out how many gallons per minute you might pump from your well. Because there's a little section on the form there that says how many gallons per minute you plan on pumping. So you can use this water calculator. If you plan on using quite a bit of water for like outdoor water use, that might be a little harder to calculate. So just keep that in mind when using this tool. Applications are only acquired for existing wells when work is done on the casing or well is deepened. And keep in mind, you got 30 days from when the well is put in, when it's installed, to follow that pump installation completion report. Also found on the same page on our website that you can find the change of ownership. Some of your clients might be located near a stream, a major stream, river, such as the Gila River system. Another one is the Little Colorado. If you don't know where those are, so you have the Gila River, which comes out from New Mexico, meets up with several other rivers from the central Arizona area, and then makes its way down past Gila Bend and all the way down to Yuma and meets up with the Colorado River system. So obviously this is one of the veins of the Colorado River system. So it's really important because as it feeds into it. Little Colorado River system is up in the northeastern part of the state. And this is also a major river system. So we want to be able to protect these as they're a main source of water for a lot of people. So if you end up placing a well near one of these river systems, and by near, there's a boundary, what we call the subflow. So even if you might be, say, a couple 100 meters away from the river itself, if you put a well into the ground, you most likely will be in a subflow zone and could be draining the stream of this water supply. So that river could actually end up declining over time if there's enough wells within the subflow zone of that river. So that's why a statement of claimant to put in your claim as a right to use that water is important. If your client has a well and they're near that river, please inform them of this. They'll probably get a letter from us, maybe give them a heads up. They're going to be issued a number that's going to be part of their claim. If they have questions about it, they can call this phone number for the adjudication section, which we have there on the bottom. So now let's talk about regulated areas of the state. Since 1980, we've carved out certain portions of the state where the groundwater is protected, which you can see there in that image on the right-hand side. So there's certain subbasins and basins that are included within these active management areas. You see your Phoenix one there in the center, and then the Canal active management area in the light blue, Tucson active management area in the yellow, and then Santa Cruz towards the bottom in green. Those are a little more heavily regulated as opposed to what you call an INA or an irrigation non-expansion authority or area, irrigation non-expansion area. So in these areas, both of these, you're not allowed to expand an irrigated area. So if you have agricultural lands, you're irrigating it, you're not allowed to expand that area of irrigation within these regulated portions of the state. So the 5 AMAs are listed there, and then there's 3 INAs, smaller portions in the state there. The AMAs, like I said, are more tightly regulated. We look for wells that could go into the ground that may be located near a utility, a water provider, that has an assured and adequate water supply designation, which means they guarantee 100 years worth of water. So
Zach, you mentioned Pinnell earlier. Is that
Yeah.
the entire Pinnell AMA that is now got a moratorium on it?
So how I mentioned earlier about how there's subbasins and basins, right? So some of those are going to look a little bit different. Some of them might have more water than others. And so we kind of ratchet it down to very particular areas. And if we see that there's a steady water decline within a subbasin, then that could jeopardize the groundwater supply that's guaranteed for 100 years, right? So I don't believe that it's Pinal AMA wide, but you can verify with the assured and adequate water supply section if you're interested in staying on top of that. I've already had a few conversations with people in the Prescott AMA because they're curious about whether or not that's a place that might be in jeopardy, you know. So that we do have a section in our department that's devoted towards giving you the most updated statistics and data on that.
So if, I know this is part of our issue is the subdivisions, so many subdivisions coming into play. And how do they find out if the seller could even sell because their water is declined and you've got a moratorium?
Right. Yeah, it's best to consult the assured and adequate water supply section. I can put that number in contact for them in the chat here in a moment. So how do you know whether or not your client's parcel is within the active management area? So we actually have a map. There's a link here to the map to discover if the parcel is within that boundary. So I'm gonna stop my share here and I'll pull up that screen for you. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is a map that's contained within what's called the active management area section of our department. So you can find that there. So these boundaries here are similar to what that map displayed a little earlier. So this is handy because you can zoom in and out of this. You put your parcel number or perhaps the owner's name. There's also the right numbers. If it's a 58, it's going to be within the active management areas. If it's a 60 number, that's part of the irrigation non-expansion areas, those smaller areas. So if I wanted to zoom in here, let's say I'm going to zoom in on a parcel. And we have a nice little legend here to show you. So it'll kind of color code or give a pattern to the parcel to show you whether or not it actually has a right and what kind of right it is. So if it's an AMA groundwater use right or a 58, you can see here the green there is an irrigation right. So they have the right to irrigate that land. And then you might see like an exempt small right. What that means is they can use the right to irrigate if they please, but it's under a certain amount of water. So like a certain amount of gallons per minute per year. And then the irrigation authority use right 60 is also here in case you end up going into those areas with that parcel. Some of these might be labeled inactive developed because the parcel and its right to irrigate has been retired so that it can be developed. And you might see that where agricultural lands are just slowly receding and giving way to more and more houses. And this is kind of the idea that they had put together with the Groundwater Management Code of 1980, was that eventually that ag land would be reduced within the regulated areas over time. This was again to conserve the groundwater. It's mainly what that's about. And some active management areas, like the Pinal active management area, like their goal within that area is to maintain ag lands for as long as possible. So not every active management area is the same in terms of their goal. So I'll stop my share and then bring that presentation back up. All right. Check. So now if you end up having a client who has a well, but they're concerned about the quality of the water, that's mostly handled by two different agencies, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, as well as the Arizona Department of Health Services. Now, ADHS has a lot of information about this. I found more through their department than I have with ADQ. They have a list of certified labs to do the testing of the water samples from the well. They break it down by what's the threshold per contaminant for the well water. And they have a nice handy PDF for people to conduct well maintenance and well testing. It's actually very quite similar to our domestic well owners handbook. So we might have overlapped a little bit there. So I'm going to pull that up real quick. So this
We
is
want to make sure that we leave time for the questions.
Right.
Especially.
Yeah, we're almost finished up here.
Yeah.
So this one has a whole well maintenance section and a water testing section. And so this handbook will educate your well owners the most about water quality testing and treatment options. There's a different treatment option for every contaminant. And so they list those here. So that's really nice. What we have is this practical guide. This is mostly full of information for people who are interested in drilling a well for domestic purposes. But we do have a section here towards the end, which talks a little bit more about the well construction design, what a cadastral is, so you can figure those out if you're interested in figuring out what cadastrals really are. And then we also have contact information for the county health departments, which is nice to have if you want to contact them about, say, like water quality, or to come out and do inspections for, like, say, like a septic system. Okay.
So the number one question on everybody's mind is the drought and your water shortages.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a big topic for sure.
Especially you touched on it in Pinal, but let's talk about it in general.
Yeah, I'll definitely get to that for sure.
All right.
So just talk a little about water quality contamination, as you might have guessed. If you have a leaky septic tank, fuel storage, maybe you have like a farm nearby where there's entire pools of animal waste. Not a lot of times though. Sometimes those tarps that they lay down to try to protect the groundwater from the animal waste, sometimes those things leak, and that can get into the groundwater supply. And so you have these contaminants that end up coming into your well. So those are things to be aware of when people are purchasing property. These could be one of the things they come across. We have a tips page here for, like, say, the well shared agreement, ensuring the well is registered in the landowner's name. making sure the landowners, the new landowners have that 55 number, that registration number for the well, so they have access to the image record for that well at any time. And then there will be a list of links that you'll be able to access when we provide Sue with the copy of this presentation.
Thank you.
And that's it. All righty. So, yes, answered Leo's question. Lydia says-
The biggest one is the water shortage.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read Lydia's question here. Thought this presentation was going to be about the future of our water situation. That's what clients are most concerned about. I'm getting asked about this more and more. Well, that makes two of us, Lydia. Yes, we do get phone calls quite a bit about the future of the water situation. My answer to most people is keep connected to our website, because we do have a lot of information about what's happening right now. There's a whole Colorado River water section of our department that's handling stakeholder negotiations and discussions about what to do about the decreasing Colorado River water supply. And so they're trying to figure out how to adjust for that. And there's also worries about groundwater in certain areas of the state. So you saw that map that I showed you earlier about the different regulated areas. So there's some areas of the state that are not regulated, in which case it's kind of Wild West. Like whoever gets access to that water first, that groundwater, they can use as much of it as they want without any repercussions from the state, because it's not regulated. So there's two areas of the state that I've seen some concerns about. I'm going to direct you to, there's a section on our website where we actually have fast links to certain counties. I'll try to look for it and get you that link, because like there's one here for facts about the Wilcox AMA. That's kind of a new thing. The Douglas AMA. So there's talks right now about establishing active management areas in certain areas of the state where there's not active management areas. So like introducing regulation in certain areas of the state. There's people trying to gather support for that. Some people are for it, some people are against it, depending on their perspective. Some people don't want regulation, some people do. And so they're going to have to talk a little bit more with each other about how they can develop some sort of consensus amongst the population. If you want a really good website to track some data about groundwater levels, because sometimes we do get questions about groundwater levels. Like, is the groundwater level going down or is it going up? Is this going to be a good investment? I direct people to a website called the Arizona Water Blueprint, developed by the Arizona State University. So they actually took huge amounts of data from various different agencies and they put it together onto this website. And you can go to the groundwater level changes tab and it'll bring you to a map where you can click on different layers. I suggest doing the 20-year layer for the subbasins. That'll give you a nice wider perspective. It'll color code the subbasin based on whether or not the majority of the wells that are being measured in that subbasin are going up or down in that 20-year time frame. All right, so if it's really dark red, it's been decreasing a lot. Okay, so that's how you can tell. If it's really dark blue, that means they're getting an increase in their water table. But keep in mind that a subbasin is pretty large still. If you want to go even more accurate than the subbasin, you can click off of subbasin and just hit the wells layer, and it'll show you by well they'll color code those red or blue depending on not they're going up or down in their water
Is that
level.
also, Zach, because I know when I moved here in 96, there was a very large aquifer under the Maricopa County whole system. And we were told that all of the groundwater had to have some system, even the developments, to pump water back into that aquifer. Is that still the case?
There are some utilities and water providers that are trying to replenish the aquifer through something called recharge. And so what I see mostly in like Tucson, for example, they had the goal of reaching what's called safe yield. So they aren't taking any more groundwater out than what's being put back in, right? So it's maintaining its water level. But what they were using for replenishment, not all the time, but some of the times they would use Colorado River water. Sometimes they might use like reclaimed water. So like it's like wastewater, but they'll treat it a little bit and then put it back into the aquifer. The thing is that as the Colorado River water has been decreasing over time, it can be difficult to maintain that same amount of recharge in the aquifer. So what happens after that, it's still up in the air right now. Okay, so let me look at the chat box here, see what else we got. The website for the groundwater data was posted there by Jim. What is the future solutions for shortage of water and what part of AZ is drought right now? I shared a little bit about the solutions that are proposed. We don't have any good solid solutions right now. It's all still being negotiated. So like I said, there's talks about increasing regulation. There's talks about this this water bank that's supposed to pull funds together for like a desal plant. Whether or not that's going to happen or not, that's still being talked about. For the drought situation in Arizona, we do have a drought and conservation coordinator named Nemesis, and she publishes a drought map. There's a short-term drought map and there's a long-term drought map. And I tend to pay more attention to the long-term drought map because it's assembling a lot of different data over time. And that gives you a much wider picture. That's put together with the assistance of the state climatologist, Nancy Sellifer, I believe her name is. And so I can, Cassie, if you're able to, maybe put Nemesis's email address in the chat box, if that's possible. All right, let's see what else we got. Is there any assistance fund available for drilling a well in Whitman City? We don't offer, our agency does not offer funding assistance for well drilling, but you might maybe get in touch with WIFA, WIFA, because they've been known to help with water assistance, like water access for more rural areas. Smaller.
You mentioned there were negotiations right now on the drought and the water. Who are the negotiations with? And how do we get information? Are you posting that on your website?
Yeah, I think we have some sort of press release.
Yeah, let me get to that right now, since I'll show you here. So you can kind of see here where it says hot topics, right? It's a hot topic in this conversation, so we know it's a hot topic for everybody. So we put that here, right? So we have lower basin drought contingency planning. We have, like I said, these facts about the what's called the Wilcox active management area, facts about Douglas active management area. None of these areas exist. These areas exist at the moment. They're just trying to gather thoughts about it, perspectives, and whether or not it can actually be accomplished. I remember correctly, I think it was Representative Regina Cobb had been proposing a bill for some time about also establishing what she called a rural management area, but we haven't seen that pass.
And one more question, have you got any information about institutional investors buying up water rights?
I do not. I'd be very curious about it though. If you discover anything, please send it my way.
And we're just about to our hour. Dwayne, as the broker, what are your suggestions for our agents on the questions they're getting from clients?
I think we've shared some really good resources today, and I think we've got some good opportunity to impart that information onto our clients real well. And I think it sounds like Zach and his team are all available to kind of help us if we need something. So, you know, to me, that would be my advice: would go ahead and use those resources, get familiar with them, and be able to answer those questions when the clients do reach out to them. And if we struggle a little bit, reach out to the department, and they seem very willing to help us. So,
Right, source of the source.
Yep.
Zach will be providing a copy of his slide presentation to me. If I'll put my email address in the chat so that you can email that to me, or request if you're wanting a copy of the slide presentation. Zach, Cassie, I really do appreciate your time, energy. We may be calling you back in the future for even more information, and I'll send some probably information on any follow-up questions that have come in. I really encourage everyone to get familiar with their website, especially direct your clients there, because that's where you can get the most up-to-date information. Getting familiar with especially if we've got what he mentioned earlier, Pinell and subdivisions with development moratorium, is getting familiar with that as well. So, any last minute anything?
I just want to share with you all that I saw some folks were looking for more information on the drought. There's actually a lot of information that we have on our website. So I just put that link in there to the drought webpage. And again, Nimi Cease, who's the contact for drought for the state of Arizona, she can provide you anything you need about the drought piece. Considering that I'm not in her position, I don't want to steal that thunder away from her. So please reach out to her. But this has been great. Thank you so much for having us. We hope to do more of these in the future.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great Friday weekend. Stay hydrated, stay cool, and pray for rain.
Yes, yes.